You're looking for a podcast where you can hear from some great hockey legends, hear them tell some great stories, and find out what they're up to today? Well, this is it. It's the Domino's Pizza Overtime Podcast. I'm your host, Gino Retta. Today's guest, a four-time Stanley Cup champion, including 3 with the Oilers, where he wore the C for a couple of years, coached them for 9 years, and was their general manager for another 3 years. And he's also the answer to a trivia question. Who's the last player in NHL history to play without a helmet? He is Craig MacTavish. Mac T, great to see you, my friend. You look fantastic. How are you feeling?
I'm feeling great, Gino. Good to see you too.
It is so nice.
Catch up.
I'm looking forward to catching up with you, buddy. You're obviously an Oiler first and foremost, above everything else. You're 4th in shorthanded goal in franchise history, 7th in games played with 701, and you hold the Iron Man record of 518 consecutive games. 3 cups with them, as I say. You played with them, coached them, general manager with them, and this past October, you got inducted into the Edmonton Oiler Hall of Fame, which is quite an achievement because other members include Gretzky, Messier, Coffey. What was that experience like for you?
Yeah, my name just doesn't flow freely with the other 3 that you just mentioned. We had 7 Hockey Hall of Fame members that played for the Oilers over the course of the time that I was here. But, you know, it was a nice recognition from the Oilers. Charlie Huddy, who was recognized, Ryan Smith, Doug Waite. So, I mean, it's a way to recognize people that the organization feels had a significant contribution without being that good.
Come on.
And talent and effectiveness is all relative to your surroundings, and we had a lot of talent back in those days. I mean, I was an offensive player till I got to the NHL, and you know that you just have to be so talented to play on the top 6 on any NHL team now. That I quickly realized that my career longevity laid in other aspects of the game.
But I know, listen, you're supposed to be humble. You're a Canadian. We all live on humility, and I appreciate that. But the stuff that you accomplish is amazing. And over the next few minutes, we'll talk about that. But I do want to start with your humble beginnings. The Bruins picked you in the 1978 draft, and you played in the old North American Hockey League, AHL/AHL in those days, for the Broom Dusters. Can you, what was that like? I saw the smirk come across your face when you thought about that. For those who don't know, it's kind of like the league that Slapshot was kind of targeted after. What was that like to play in that league after you'd already been drafted by the Boston Bruins?
Well, it was their main affiliate.
Yeah.
And I came out of the University of Lowell at that time. I was drafted in the 9th round. Went back to school, had another very good year in Division II at the University of Lowell, and then went to the Boston Bruins training camp. Came close to making the team, but didn't. Was sent down to the Broom Dusters, Binghamton Broom Dusters. They're located in Broome County, so they thought that was an interesting play on what they were going to call the team, the Broom Dusters. And, you know, I remember signing a contract back in, I got $10,000 to sign, $15,000 in the American League to play, and $40,000 in the NHL to play. And I joke to people, but I'm pretty serious that at no point in my life have I felt like I had more money than that first year playing in the Broom Dusters, making $15,000. And I'm coming from the University of Lowell, where my mother would send me $20 a week. And I mean, I thought I had a lot of money then, but you know, I had played with a lifelong friend of mine now, Tom Songen, and Gary Burns on the line down there, but you wouldn't remember any of those names, I would doubt. But you know, great people, good hockey players. I had a really good start and played quite a few games for the Bruins. I played about 38 games in Binghamton and then went up to Boston that year.
Yeah, I want to talk to you about Boston. And there was an incident in Boston, which is one of the classic hockey moments of all time. Um, for hockey fans, it was December, I think it was just before Christmas in 1979, the melee at MSG. You were playing for the Boston Bruins at that point. You were in your rookie season. You guys were playing the Rangers. It was Bruins and the Rangers. Game was over, and it seemed like all was okay. At the end of all of this, there's the video of Mike Milbury beating a fan in the stands with the fan's own shoe.
Yeah.
Walk me through how we got to that and what your recollections of that were.
I went to a scouts dinner this summer, Western Professional Scouts dinner that they have every year, and John Davidson was there. And John Davidson was the goalie for the Rangers during that melee. And, you know, he and I had a completely different recollection of what happened. And, you know, he was wrong. I had a better recollection of what actually happened because he started the whole thing. And it was.
I did not hear that. I did not hear that it was JD that started that. I heard that it was a fan that punched Stan Jonathan in the face.
Well, that's very true. But the way that occurred was Al Secord, who played for the Bruins back in the day, wonderful guy, really tough customer. He was abusing the Swedes, Anders Hedberg and Ulf Nielsen, throughout the game, and that didn't sit well with JD. And you know, it was a fantastic hockey game. And Phil Esposito had a breakaway on Jerry Cheevers in the last 30 seconds of the game. And the Bruins, we were up 3-2, I think it was. Jerry Cheevers made a great save on his old buddy and longtime teammate, Phil Esposito. And the game ended. Well, you know, that should have been the end of it. We would have went to our end of the rink. But John Davidson skated all the way down out of the New York Ranger net to have a run at Al Secord, had a verbal go at Al Secord. And so that's where the melee started. And so that's kind of my interpretation of how JD started it. And I saw the guy come right down the stairs. I saw the guy who leaned over, and that was back in the days where the glass was quite shorter around the boards. Because of that incident, they raised the glass and made it pretty consistent in all, or it is consistent in all the rinks. And this guy came down and he leaned over the glass and he just suckered Stan Jonathan in the face. I saw the whole thing and I thought, you know, Stan's going to kill this guy because, as you know, he was a tough customer. But Stan just took it and didn't do anything. And I was thinking, wow, that amazing restraint from Stan. And then Terry O'Reilly was on the glass like Spider-Man over the glass. And then we all went into the stands. And I ended up having the guy that punched Stan because I saw who it was. And I kind of had him down between the seats. And, you know, being an empathetic, pretty kind guy, I gave him a couple shots. But didn't hurt him at all. And but Mike Milbury grabbed the guy's shoe, and then we went down to the dressing room. You can imagine what it's like getting out of MSG. Then, we had security, the police were around, people were going crazy, and that doesn't happen to New Yorkers. And you know, I was not very naive back in those days, and still somewhat naive, some would say, but. It was, you know, we got out of there, and you know, we went to play the Islanders in the playoffs, and the guy that started the whole thing had wanted to serve one of the players a subpoena.
Yeah,
and so he came to Harry Sinnen as the team was just getting on the bus and said, where's Stan Jonathan? I want to serve him or Mike Milbury or whoever, Peter McNabb, Terry O'Reilly, a subpoena. And Harry said, they're on the bus. You go ahead and go in there if you want.
Good luck.
Yeah, good luck. The guy, you know, discretion, the better part of valor, decided not to. But yeah, it was a wild incident.
It was great. And for those of you who, I mean, if you remember it, you remember it fondly because it was a crazy incident and nobody got hurt. But it was those days. That was the kind of hockey.
Yeah.
And play with one of the all-time greats, Ray Bourque, in Boston, and then you shift to Edmonton. You're consistently, I mean, you take a shot at yourself for, you know, just being a quiet guy in the background, but you were consistently scoring 20 goals a year. Yeah, I think you did it 6 times, and not on the power play. So you were a guy who could score some goals, but you had a chance to play with Wayne Gretzky at that point. And I thought you had a really good quote where you said, you consider yourself fortunate because you weren't the guy driving the bus. Explain that quote and what it was like to play in that. I mean, one of the greatest collections of players all time on one of the greatest runs. You end up winning 3 cups in 5 seasons with the Oilers in 87, 88, and 1990. What was that run like for you?
Oh, amazing. I always talk about longevity as trying to make the best team you can and hang on. And that was really my mindset with Edmonton. And, you know, you don't stay in one destination without the support of the manager and the coaches and the teammates. And I was fortunate to have that. Glenn Sather, as tough a guy as he was tremendously loyal guy. And, you know, John Muckler, Ted Green, all the coaches there were fantastic. Unbelievable leadership. You don't really recognize it when you're going through it. But when you get through it and look back on it, you know, those types of leaders are rare. And I mean, I was really fortunate to go to a team where the leadership was so mature and so in place with Wayne and Mark Messier and Kevin Lowe. I mean, and I've often thought about it. And, you know, why were these guys such great leaders? And they all are and were. But parenting, you know, you know, their parents were always around, Walter and Phyllis, and Mark, Doug and Mary Jean, and Kevin's mom, Jessie. They were all around, and they had, you know, all these guys had tremendous support from their family and their parents. And I mean, Wayne Gretzky was an unbelievable hockey player. I mean, you think he was good in the games, you should have seen him in practice. I mean, the stuff he used to do, and he loved to practice. The Oilers back in those days, we enjoyed practice. And I mean, it was always John Muckler, you know, ran most of the practices, or Glenn would go out there. And, you know, we were all familiar with the drills. We'd snap the puck around. It was more entertaining to watch the Oilers practice back in those days than to play.
You know what? I mean, and you and I both have had this experience to see Gretzky away from the game, away from the ice, and the way other people react around him, the way he reacts to the general public. And you tell a great story about Wayne in a golf cart with Tiger Woods, where you had a funny experience about that. Can you tell that story for us?
Well, we were in Vegas. Kevin Lowe and I were in Vegas, and Wayne was in Vegas, and he was playing golf with Tiger the next day. So he invited Kevin and I to go play golf with Tiger. I had a really lifelong friend that I was in Vegas with. And, you know, he came to me in the morning, and he had cut himself getting out of bed. And I said, "Hey, Steve, I mean, you're a good enough friend, and I can be really open with you and tell you this outright, that you could pretty much die on me right on the floor right now, and I'm still golfing with Tiger today." Fortunately, the injury wasn't that bad, but yeah. We went and we met with Tiger and his then coach Butch Harmon at where they practiced out of like a garage type setup. And Butch Harmon was a real character too, as well, and showed us a bunch of funny outtakes of him teaching, you know, men and women to golf. But we played Rio Seco. Kevin and I rode together, obviously, and Tiger and Wayne rode together. And it was a miserable day. It was super cold out there, and it was busy. So, I mean, one thing I know about superstars is they don't wait in line for anything.
No.
And, you know, everybody hates that, and they don't have to. So Tiger knows the course really well, and he's driving ahead of holes and skipping groups. And just the look on people's faces when Tiger and Wayne Gretzky would drive by. go to the next tee. But we had a wonderful day there, and a memory for a lifetime for sure.
No kidding. And speaking of memories, and I've been lucky enough with this podcast to have, I mean, every week we have Stanley Cup champions on this show, which is amazing. And one of the consistent questions I like to ask is when it finally was over and the clock ticks down to zero and you realize I'm a Stanley Cup champion for the very first time. What's that feeling like? What are the emotions? What are the first thoughts that go through your mind? What was it like for you? I mean, you did it 4 different times. What was it like the first time for you?
Well, you would think jubilation, right, would be the most prominent emotion that you feel in those situations, in that situation, in that moment. But I mean, there's relief too. I mean, the first cup that I was a part of was won in the 7th game against the Philadelphia Flyers on a Mike Keenan coach team. I mean, in my opinion, it never should have got that far. We were, a much better hockey team. And you ask Mike, and he'll admit that too as well. We had 7 Hall of Famers, and they might have had 1.
Yeah.
And 1 or 2. But relief for sure. And it is such a grind to win a Stanley Cup and to go 2 months, which you can't explain it. You have to live it and to realize what a grind it is and how emotionally and physically taxing it is to win a Stanley Cup. And one of the things I think that benefited us was that Glenn Sather was, I mean, he wasn't a hockey nerd, right? He had a lot of interests outside of the game. I mean, he loved to hunt and fish and snowmobile, and a great outdoors guy, golf. And he used to encourage us to do things away from the game. Grant Fuhr and I would golf a lot during the NHL playoffs. If we weren't playing, we were likely golfing. So you're not feeling like you're missing out on all these things that are rites of spring here. So we have the resiliency when you're pushed to push back. You're not overwhelmed by the day-to-day rigors of the NHL playoffs. But yeah, it was, I mean, relief the first time. Pretty much every time I won the cup, I was relieved it was over, and wanted to get on a beach somewhere and treat your body well.
It's nice that you can use the term "every time I won the cup." Not everybody I talk to on this show can say "every time I won the cup." One of the other guys, though, who was there with you the whole time, you guys won in '87, you won again in '88, and then Wayne's gets moved out to LA. And now the big question is, what can this Oiler team do without the great one? He was gone, and you won the cup again in 1990. I've asked Mess this question about what it was like to win without Wayne. Let me ask you the same question. What was it like to you? What did it mean to you guys? I mean, I know you would love to have had Wayne there for the journey, but he was gone. He wasn't a part of that third cup. What was that like?
Hard. Really hard. I mean, it's tough to win without him. And but we found a way, and it was just an unbelievable set of circumstances that, we really weren't favored that year. It was maybe my most rewarding cup would have been 1990 because it was much, much more unexpected. But Glenn made a deal with Detroit to bring in Adam Graves and Joe Murphy. And they were 2/3 of the kid line, along with Martin Jelena, who was acquired in Wayne's trade to LA. And that line, I mean, this still baffles me to this day, that line was as dominant a line as we had in the playoffs. And I mean, we had Mess and Andy and Craig Simpson and Yari and Tick and Wayne. This line was as dominant as those other 2 lines for this short window of opportunity. They could all fly. They had, and they were unbelievable. Like, I watched a couple games a year or so ago, and I just couldn't believe how tenacious they all were on the puck and how dominant they were. And for whatever reason, the next year you would just assume that you put the kid line together, they're going to be as dominant, and it was nothing. I mean, it was gone. They just didn't have the same effect on the game, and to me, that is still puzzling to this day how that could occur. But that team was Craig Simpson was really, really good then too.
Get ready for the game with the Domino's $8.99 mix and match deal. Score big with any medium 2-topping pizza and any 2 items like pastas, stuffed cheesy bread, boneless chicken, or classic chicken wings. Domino's has you covered. Order today from Canada's favorite pizza at domino's.ca. So you go through your incredible run with the Oilers. You end up with 3 cups there. The team gets basically broken apart. Wayne's gone. Mess is gone. Now you're in the 1993-94 season. The Rangers are doing well. They've still never won a cup in their front. That had been a drought for, I want to say, 50 years for the Rangers. It was a long, long drought. Trade deadline comes, and you end up being told you're on the way to the New York Rangers after the trade deadline. What was it like for you to hear that move was coming, and what were you thinking as you were making your way for a reunion with Mark Messier?
Well, I mean, it was unbelievable because the Rangers were in Calgary at the time. I was in Edmonton. I went to Calgary, and then Rangers went to Edmonton and played in Edmonton. Yeah. So it was super strange. But I mean, I talked to Glenn. He had relieved Ted Green of the coaching duties and taken over the coaching duties that year. And Glenn asked me if I'd like to go to the playoffs, be traded and go somewhere to play in the playoffs. I said, absolutely, I'd love to. And he said, well, where do you want to go? And I said, Detroit. Because I thought they had the best opportunity back then to win. And in his infinite wisdom, he sent me to New York, which was a better destination just because, I mean, there were 7, including myself, and 6 others, 7 ex-Oilers that played on that Stanley Cup winning team. So it was a pretty easy transition. And they won the President's Cup that year. They had, they made a lot of moves at the trade deadline. So it took a little bit of time to gel, but incredible memory. And I was really only there for a short period of time before I went to Philadelphia the next year.
But you were critical. It's funny because one of the faceoffs you took there, the headlines read, the most famous faceoff in New York Rangers history. You were a part of it. Let me set the stage. We're in the 1994 Stanley Cup final. It's game 7. The Rangers are up. You guys are up 3-2, dying seconds. You guys get called for icing. 32 seconds left. Mess comes on the ice. He takes the draw. He wins the draw. Puck gets moved around. Icing again. Now your coach, Mike Keenan, with 2 seconds left, dying seconds of a game, you've got to hang on. You got to win this draw. Tell the audience what happens at that point and who gets sent out to take the face off and how it unraveled.
Well, you're right. I was always confused why Mark didn't take that face off. And he was a better face off man than I. I mean, I was good in the face off circle, but I never really knew why he didn't take that face off. But he told me just a couple of years ago that he thought the only guy that could score was Pavel Bure, and Pavel lined up on the inside, and I don't know whether, and then he moved to take the face off. So Pavel Bure took the face off because he was a lefty. The face off was on their left side, and he was going to try and shoot it in the net from the face off. So Mark, instead of going to me and saying, get out of here, I'm taking this face off, just let me hang in there and take the face off. So, I mean, it was, and normally you wouldn't be at all concerned with that little time left, but bad things that happened to the Rangers during that run in the last, minute with the goalie out protecting a lead. We lost quite a few leads, so we were all a little gun shy.
Yeah, but you did it. I mean, Mike Keenan, to his credit, I remember the famous quote by him is, "MacTavish won the draw, we won the cup." I mean, that's pretty cool. I mean, you talk about the humility that you had in your game, and I realize you were playing with some of the greatest players of all time. So in a way, that makes you feel somewhat humble. But you were I don't even want to call you a role player, because you're way more than a role player. You were just the perfect fit in what a team needed in that second tier to make things happen. What was it about your personality that allowed you to say, I know my role here? And again, I don't want to use the term role player, because you were way more than a role player, obviously. How did it work for you so well?
Well, I mean, back in those days, we had 12 good forwards. I mean, we had 6 close to Hall of Fame forwards, and then the bottom 6, we'd always compete for ice time in the third period. And you knew if you were not going well after 2 periods, Glenn would normally shorten the bench to 3 lines in the third, and you'd be on the bench. So it was good motivation between the third and fourth line, good competition between the third and fourth line. But no, it was easy to fit into that role. I enjoyed it, and as I said earlier, you don't last that long without the support from the coach. And I mean, there were a lot of good players, but I had a consistent role, whether I was scoring or whether I wasn't scoring. I was not, and that's why I left New York, because I wasn't sure that Mike Keenan was going to show me the same amount of respect, because back in those days, Eddie Olchuk and Greg Gilbert, Mike Hartman, and those guys, I mean, they wouldn't see the ice for 15, 20 games, and I didn't want to be part of that. But
speaking of coaching, you ended up coaching the Oil, and I was there for the Cup final in 06 with the Hurricanes. You guys made it all the way to to the Cup final with Carolina when they won their first franchise Stanley Cup. Then you went on to be the GM with the Edmonton Oilers, and I joked about the fact that you're the answer to the trivia question about the fact that you were the last guy to wear a helmet in the NHL. There's also another trivia question: is who drafted Connor McDavid? And it was not you, by so close. Like you were the GM of the Oilers. You drafted Leon Draisaitl in 2014. You were set to win the draft lottery and draft Connor McDavid in 2015, but it didn't happen. Tell our audience how that unfolded and how close it was to almost happening.
Yeah, well, we had Darnell Nurse my first year, which I loved Darnell. I thought he was going to be what he is, and an unbelievable defender, and tough and intense. And then Leon Draisaitl, hard to predict. He'd be as dominant as he is, but we knew he was a good player. And then I had Bill Scott, who was my assistant general manager at the time, go to the draft lottery, because the U18 tournament was being played in Switzerland at the time. So I thought, I mean, it was my belief as manager that you should have seen the top 50 players, a couple times. So I went over there. Bill Scott and his Lucky Sox won the draft lottery. Scott Housen was the assistant general manager too as well, and he and I were in Switzerland at 2:30 in the morning, 3:00 in the morning, hugging each other in the hallway of the Swiss hotel and jumping up and down, because quite clearly the Oiler fortunes had changed with that lottery pick. And then things started to unravel a little bit for whatever, a myriad of reasons. And we went from dancing in the hallway and hugging each other to me being replaced by Peter Chiarelli that came in and drafted Connor McDavid. And I mean, we had accumulated. We had a bad team back then, and good people, but we weren't even close. And so we had accumulated. We had 3 first-round draft choices. One of them was the first. So we were in a pretty good. The organization was in a pretty good standing going into that draft.
I want to ask you about something, and you can share to whatever extent you feel comfortable sharing this. You had a bit of a health scare in 2019. Can you share, like, they found a lump on the side of your neck? Is that what it was? Like,
yeah, that's right. It was lymphoma, non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, and it was earlier than that. It wasn't 2019. It was earlier than that. But I had left the Oilers as a coach and was going over to coach the Stanley Cup.
You're on your way to Davos?
Yes, I was on my way to Davos, and it was right after Halloween. We always had the neighbors always congregated here at our house in Edmonton, and one of my neighbors was a MD, and he gave me a little examination, then found a little lump, and then he said, well, it's not cancer or anything. And then he called me the next day, said, you better go get that checked. Yeah. So I went the day before I flew to Davos to coach the Spengler Cup. And, they did a biopsy, and the technician, they normally don't say anything. And I said, well, everything's good, right? And he said, well, it could be better. And so I blew that off quickly and headed on the plane. And never really knew till I got back. They kept it from me till I got back that I had this lucky form of cancer. So I was treated for it a number of years later, and hasn't come back yet. Feeling good.
Good to hear that. Buddy, I can't tell you how much fun it's been catching up with you and hearing some of your stories and stuff. And you've been so gracious with your time. Do you mind if we do one last thing before you take off on us? We do something we call 5 Fast Facts, where I ask you 5 quick questions. You give me the 5 quick answers that come to mind. Okay?
No problem, Gino. I missed my time at TSN after I left. As coach of the Oilers, I worked at TSN, as you know, with Stevie Dryden and Bob McKenzie and James Duffy, and that was what a cast of characters. And,
characters be what you would call it, buddy. It was always
those meetings in Stevie Dryden's office. Stevie trying to get Bob to become aligned with what he's thinking.
Stevie Dryden's our hockey editor at TSN for a long time. He's the quizmaster. You guys may know as the quizmaster, and
awesome guy.
We're always long because Steve always wanted to be right on, and you were always great about those things. Okay, time now for 5 Fast Facts with 4-time Stanley Cup champion Craig MacTavish. Okay, Craig, this is a tough one, but I want you to get your true answer. Don't hide your emotions or feelings on this one. Who was the best teammate you ever played with?
Kevin Lowe.
Wow, you played with Gretzky, you played with Messier, and Kevin Lowe is the best teammate you ever played with. Wow.
He was everybody's best friend. He was Gretz's best friend. He was Mess's best friend. Unbelievable person and teammate.
Awesome. Who was the best coach you ever played for?
Glenn Sather.
Fair enough. Who did you hate playing against the most and why?
Claude Lemieux, for obvious reasons.
No kidding. Did he ever give you stitches? Or just forehead?
No, but he wasn't a popular guy in the Oiler room back in those days.
No, he was not. After all your success in your career, both on and off the ice, what's the one piece of advice you would give yourself if you could go back and speak to a 15-year-old Mac T and give him a piece of advice? What would you have said to yourself back then?
Just get to being a professional earlier than I did. I mean, I think now having been in the business for a lot of years, you can always kind of predict the personalities that are going to get to their maximum potential as quickly as possible. And I could have expedited that process if with a little bit more focus and professionalism.
All right. One last question. If you hadn't become a pro hockey player, what career do you think you would have been in instead?
No idea.
There was never a plan B?
There was never a plan B. No. I mean, I would have gone to school and I mean, I had 2 years of university at the University of Lowell. When I left hockey, I went back to school for a couple of years and took an MBA at Queens. But I would have done something in business.
Fair enough. 5 fast facts with the Edmonton Oiler Hall of Famer, 4-time Stanley Cup champion, Craig MacTavish. Craig, thank you so much for this, my friend. It has been so great catching up with you, and I'm so glad you're doing so well. Really, really appreciate this, pal.
You're welcome, Gino. My pleasure. Thank you for having me on your show.
Four-time Stanley Cup champion and the last player to play in the NHL without a helmet, Craig MacTavish. The Overtime Podcast is proudly presented by Domino's Pizza and Athletes Care. If you're watching the big game at home or hungry right now, Domino's has you covered. Check out the Domino's Mix and Match deal. Medium 2-topping pizzas, pasta, stuffed cheesy bread, boneless chicken, or classic chicken wings. Any 2 items for only $8.99 each. Canada's favorite pizza at Domino's.ca. Athletes Care is proud to be celebrating its 26th year offering sports medicine services to both elite athletes and the general population who require rehab for a new or chronic injury or pain. Go to where the best go. Athletes Care Sports Medicine Clinics with 26 locations in the Greater Toronto Area and in Ottawa. Hey, if you missed any parts of the show, don't worry. Visit our website at overtimepodcast.ca. The Domino's Pizza Overtime Podcast can be found on Spotify, iTunes Podcasts, or any of your favorite podcast platforms as well. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel at O-Time Podcast. Until next week, I'm Gino Ranzo saying so long, hockey fans, and thanks for joining us on the Domino's Overtime Podcast.